What up, Green Gang? We're back at it with the Green Bros Grow Show. And we're going to be talking about some composting and a little bit of different ways of composting. What do you know about composting, Larry?
I know you can take a bunch of the normal stuff you use on a daily basis and pile it up together in a specific way to create your own compost pile. And we're going to kind of go over what's good and what's bad to throw in there and why it may be good or bad.
Hell yeah. And let's also, bring on Jeff from Mad Hatter Organics. He knows a little bit about composting, and we'll get some composting facts out there. Hey, what up, Jeff? How's it going, man?
What's going on, man? Pretty good, pretty good.
Good deal, good deal. Glad you're feeling a little better. Had a little sinus thing going on for a little bit, but
Yeah, that time of year, man. That time of year. It's
I
all good though
swear,
now.
yeah, the spring starts
Yeah,
rolling around, stuff starts getting active, and you're like, oh shit.
yeah. All the mold from the
Year before.
snow melting, and from the year before, everything all starts coming around again. Yeah, happens to me every year.
So I know you know a little bit about composting, especially a little bit about the Bokashi composting you recently put out a video on,
Yeah,
which I feel like is a really appropriate topic because not a lot of people have large space to create large compost piles that can take a little while to break down and whatnot. And Bokashi might be able to be a useful tool for many. So why don't you give a basic rundown on Bokashi composting?
yeah. Bokashi's just it's a Japanese word that means fermented composting. It's effective microorganisms that will break down all the food and organic matter, and it's safe to throw in meats and dairy products and whatnot. It's a pretty easy process and it happens pretty quick. You could do it in a 5-gallon bucket underneath your sink or in your pantry. It's it it's it doesn't have a lot of smell at all, so it's what is it, anaerobic, I believe.
Yep.
And yeah, so it takes away that uh, that one factor of like pests and varmints and stuff trying to get into your compost if you do have meat and dairy product in there. And it being inside your house, you're not going to have to worry about pests and stuff coming into your house. But yeah, Bokashi compost is super simple. Anyone can do it, and it doesn't require a lot of space.
Hell yeah. And you'll be able to like Jeff was saying, uh, do the meats and dairies and the citruses, the things that people tell you to not normally put into a compost pile. And you can do those because they'll actually break down with those anaerobic bacteria. And then you can either add that Bokashi compost directly into your soil, a little bit by little bit, or you can add it to your worm bed or your own compost pile if you do have a small compost pile.
Yeah, it's a good Kickstarter for if you want to start getting into composting. With your browns and greens and food waste and whatnot, it's a good Kickstarter to get your compost pile going.
So speaking of which, day one, what does that look like? Let's say you want to start your Bokashi pile. Do you start with making the bin, getting that prepared, or do you just start saving different produce aside that you might want to throw in there and then kind of make the bin when you got some stuff saved up? Or what's the smartest way to go about that?
You don't really need to save up anything. Basically, you can buy little kits on Amazon or wherever. 5-gallon bucket. It's got a little spigot at the bottom. It's raised up about there's a little grate system raised up off the bottom of the bucket about an inch. Start throwing all your produce and whatnot, all your food scraps into the bucket. And then just start adding a teaspoon here or there with Bokashi, the Bokashi brand, and you just keep going.
And you're just rocking and rolling.
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, honestly, it's a really great system for, like I said, a lot of the apartment and city dwellers to be able to compost things and whatnot. It goes along the same lines of a Korean natural farming, like a fermented fish juice or fish extract um, or fermented plant extract, except it's our leftover foods, and then you can, like I said, add that to your compost or soil for additional microbes and food for your
Yep,
plants.
for sure. Yeah, you can also take that bokashi that you made in the bucket, plant it, well, sow it into the soil, uh, let it let the microbes kind of mingle with your garden microbes and garden soil pH. Let it mingle for a week or two and get it established, and then start planting your plants directly onto it.
So you could use it
It's
as like a reamendment, so to speak. If you're
Hmm.
remixing your soil, you throw that in there, it's going to be another added boost.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh,
Rock and roll.
absolutely.
Rock and roll.
Now, for those out there that don't know quite that much about composting, have you started your own actual compost pile, or have you not yet?
I have. It's more of just a tumbler system, 55-gallon drum. That I pretty much just throw food waste, old soil into it, and add in some bokashi as well, uh, some worm castings, just to get those microbacteria inside it, uh, just to get things rolling as well. But
Nice.
it's kind of a simple little, just experimental compost kind of thing. But I did start uh, a compost leaf pile last
Hmm.
year. As soon as all the leaves fell off the trees, piled them all up in my yard, threw them out back into the corner, and just let it do its thing over the winter. Once it starts getting a little warmer now, and the grass starts growing, I'll throw my grass clipping on there, so you get that browns and greens,
Hmm.
and yeah, and then I'll start throwing some food scraps in there as well.
We got a pretty giant pile like that going on right by our shed. And I think it's probably about time that we could start using some of it because it's
Oh,
been a
we've
few
already used
seasons.
some of it, but yeah,
Yeah.
we definitely could be using
Well, I
more
meant
of it.
time in the season
Oh
to
yeah,
go out there and grab it.
and
Yeah,
that's the
yeah,
great thing is, you're talking about the leaf, and like, specifically leaf. You can get that leaf mold soil that you can get, deep in the forest. You can actually start making that if you have a bunch of trees around your property, and emulating nature that way.
yeah, for sure. You
And
also got to kind of be careful on what types of leaf. Uh, Maybe not so much a leaf, but certain pine needles
needles, yeah.
could be
Hmm.
could be an antibacterial pine needle. So it actually uh, you
Could
know lessens the effect of
Hmm.
composting. It takes
yeah.
And it
it's
wraps
a detriment to
nitrogen,
them.
and yeah,
Yeah,
it,
that's why you see, like, under these pine trees, you see just a big old dead patch. There's
mhm,
nothing going on there.
That's a
It's
great
not.
point.
It might not be, maybe it might be a little bit because it's not getting enough sun, but a big factor of it is
is all
because
that
of the
pine needles.
antibacterial properties. Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah. So
I mean, we used to use
Maybe
pine
that's why
sap and
raccoons
different
love hanging
things
out in
for
those trees, dude.
medicinal purposes back in the day when we didn't have like neosporin or
yeah,
things like that. So it
yeah, for
definitely
sure.
makes complete sense. And yeah, so like I guess a rule of thumb would be if you're gonna start a compost pile in your backyard or on your property, you'd want to use mostly uh, grass that you've clipped and leaves that have fallen from oak trees or other hardwood trees that not necessarily are a pine variety,
No pine
deciduous.
variety. Don't
Yeah,
be throwing aloe vera stalks in there.
I mean
That
aloe
kind of
vera
stuff.
be all right in there, but
Yeah.
Well, I mean, aloe is also antibacterial, so you're kind of
Um.
in a certain capacity. But
Yeah. Stuff like maple leaves, oak leaves. Yeah. Bigger leaves that are, the browns you'd consider
hmm
dying leaves. So
Yeah, definitely save
Browns.
those. Like I know a lot of people they'll have their garbage or waste services take them away. They'll pack them up in the leaf bags and have the garbage or waste services take them away. And what's
Yep.
crazy is all the garbage service is doing is taking those leaves and grass that you put in those bags, composting
Making
it at their
compost
facility, and then
Yep.
selling
and
it back
selling
to
it.
you.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you're paying
There's
for it to be taken away, and then you're also paying for it to go back on
yeah.
your property. So
Yeah.
it's pretty crazy.
I know my local municipality, they actually give compost away for free.
Oh, good
So they
deal.
do take all
Good.
those waste bins, compost it, and then give it back to people for
I would
free.
say sometimes you just have too many either way. Like you'll have enough for the compost pile you need, and then you get like 5 more runs of leaves, and you're like, "What the hell am I going to do with all this?"
Yeah. Yeah. I've definitely filled up a few bins and just had to keep, tossing them. But
Hmm.
I know, like, on the point of municipality giving out compost for free, you really have to be careful with that stuff too.
Hmm.
I was just having a conversation with a family friend and saying that I wanted to go get compost from the municipality, and he's like, "Oh, really?" He's like, I take my lawnmower and I do an engine oil change on it, and then I dump out the old gas, and all that old oil and gas just goes straight into that green bin. And I'm like, really?
Why?
I'm like, so so you're just like polluting this entire green bin with your old shitty gas and oil, and then it's getting sent to the municipality dump, getting compost, and now your compost is just absolutely wrecked with all
Different
these harmful
chemicals and stuff.
chemicals.
Yeah.
Damn, that's
So
messed
it's
up.
like, mm, you have to. I suggest going to get the soil tested for chemicals, heavy metals, whatnot like that. But be very careful when you do go do that. So
Yeah,
Good
hopefully you
tip.
can find a good local compost that somebody has a love for creating compost in your
yeah,
area, and you can find that person. And if you can find that person, you'll find some really great compost.
yeah, and that's exactly why I'm doing it too. Is because I don't want to go to the municipality and get that
Bunk.
chemical ridden compost now. It's
Yeah.
wrecked it
And
for
there's
me.
a
So
lot of decent bagged compost. Malibu has some really great compost, and a lot of other places have some good compost. But at the end of the day, 20, 30, $40 a bag, it starts adding up, and you're like, if I can make my own,
That would be
and it's
awesome.
even it's
exactly.
as good or better than what you can normally buy. That's a
Especially when
win-win.
it's inoculated with your indigenous microbes from
Hmm.
your property, right? You know what you've done to your property, so
Yeah, and I find that to be the most important because things that have a high level of indigenous microorganisms, whether that be food or a drink or the smoke you're smoking, it all works better if it's from your area.
yeah,
It's just something weird that science decided that that's how that shit's gonna work.
yeah, for sure. And on that kind of note is, you have to also be careful on what you put into your compost for food scraps.
Hmm.
Uh, you know, bananas, you throw banana peels in there, and wherever they come from, Cuba or somewhere, uh, you don't know what's on those banana peels for pesticides, antibacterial stuff. Uh,
Yeah.
Quite a
you got to
bit,
be
and then it's
careful.
also irradiated before it gets on a boat coming across to here, and then there's
Yeah,
no microbiology on it. That's why it can stay fresh long enough to get here.
yeah, yeah.
And
Who
Ideally,
knows
you
what they're
should
doing,
like
right?
super wash all your fruits before eating them in the first place.
Yeah,
But either way, it's on there.
a lot of the tropical fruits, unfortunately, because we can't really grow tropical fruits here in the U.S., so those are imported mostly.
Yeah.
Um, or
that's why
and
it's
I should
important
say,
to.
in North America, we can't really grow tropical fruits.
Yeah,
That
yeah,
very
yeah. The mangoes and the oranges and
Yeah.
whatnot.
Yeah. I was gonna say Florida's got it down pat, bro.
Yeah, but
But
it's the one state that I
yeah,
mean,
pretty
you
much the one.
can technically
Yeah,
grow oranges even here and lemons here, but you have to do it in a greenhouse, and so it costs more, and
It's rough. Yeah.
yeah,
And at
it's
that
pretty
point,
crazy.
you're back to paying $30, $40 a bag for the compost because that's how much it costs you to grow.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, it's
That-
still better to grow them locally, but at the same time, it still does cost more when that crop isn't meant for that
Yeah,
area.
it's still got to be practical, right?
Yeah, and that's why it's so important to grow your own vegetables. You know, use the stalk of the lettuce. You know, throw that, if you grow it in your own garden, throw it in your own compost. Just completely recycles itself, right? You know what was on that. You know it was grown organically. You know,
And then
how it was treated.
if you source a lot of your food from farmers markets, that you know the different farmers you get your food from, and you know that they grow organically and they practice ethical practices and whatnot. Definitely use that stuff for composting as well. And
Yeah.
then
Super excited about
even
those opening back up.
even if you know you're in a more of a city environment and you're trying to get a compost going, check out a lot of the high-end health restaurants. They have a lot of food waste that they probably throw away and might be willing to sell you very cheaply or even give to you
Yep.
that you can compost and start getting a big compost going of good ingredients.
Yep, for
That's
sure.
another good tip if you're starting even a worm bin, is you can go to the local coffee shops and restaurants that serve organic, well sourced ingredients, and see if you can get their waste products and feed it to your worm bin and composts. Well, Green Gang, it's this part of the video where I tell you how YouTube doesn't help out a lot of us cannabis content creators. So if you'd like to directly support the channel, you can go down to the link in the description to buy me a coffee / Green Goblin 510, and you can join our membership for a couple of dollars a month or directly support us with a couple of dollars and gain access to some exclusive posts, some behind the scenes content creation, as well as the exclusive Discord role Green Gang and the Goblins Lab Discord. Shout out to all the Green Gang for the support.
With aspect to composting and how to build a compost pile, I just wanted to make sure that people understand, like, if you're gonna do a compost pile, you need to do it big enough for it to
Absolutely.
actually get that thermophilic or thermophilic action, I guess you'd call
That's
it.
exactly what it's
Uh,
called.
um, no smaller than a 3x3x3. You know, anything smaller than that, you won't get that. You know,
That heat up
thermal
process.
buildup.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So basically, what Jeff or Matt Hatter's saying is, if you can, like by minimum, your pile has to be 3 foot wide by 3 foot long by 3 foot deep, like a cube.
But ideally,
But
you want
if you can get that to like
4,
3.5, 4 feet,
6.
that's even better because the very outside edges of the compost pile will remain a bit cooler, but you'll have that hotness radiate more throughout the entire pile if you have a little bit larger pile.
Yeah, for sure.
And that thermophilic action is what's going to, one, break down a lot of the organic material that's in there, two, kill off viruses, pathogens, and bacteria that you don't want, and as well as kill off weed seeds and other seeds that you're not trying to grow in your crop or in your farm.
And a big key to that temperature range is to get that up to 135 to 160, and over a period of
Over 5
2,
days.
3, 4, 5 days, depending on the temperature. If it's on the low end, longer days. If it's on the high end, shorter days.
Yeah, this is like the same process that would happen when you re-amend your soil and it's cooking. It's getting
Yeah.
up to an actual temperature.
Yep.
Like you'll be able to feel it with your hand.
Exactly.
It'll
That's a
be
thermophilic
very warm.
reaction.
Yeah.
And
Or
that
an
thing
ex
is
or otherwise known as an exothermic reaction.
and the thing is like like we're talking, if you build a pile big enough like that, even in the dead of winter, you'll see steam coming off that pile, the
Yeah,
snow
there'll be
around
no
it,
snow on it.
the no
Yeah.
snow around it, and like right around it there'll be no snow because it creates
You
that
know that's
material.
warm if it's melting snow in Canada, man. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah. Yeah, I also, I mean, with that 3x3, if you want to build a cage, say like out of pallet or chicken wire, you know, make a big circle tube cylindrical type thing, start dumping all your compost in there, that whole cage of chicken wire will allow the oxygen to penetrate in from the sides and actually have that anaerobic
Yeah, that's what we
reaction.
use. We use a giant
Or
chicken
sorry,
wire
aerobic,
tube.
not
Aerobic,
anaerobic.
yeah.
Yeah.
And then like even some like industrial scale compost facilities will inject air into their compost
Mm-hmm.
piles with you know,
Just to speed it up,
powerful
or
pumps. Yeah, powerful pumps and PVC just laid
Yeah,
out.
you can jab a whole tube of PVC right down the center of it. Make sure that the oxygen's getting to the center as well.
that's dope.
And then there's another really great compost method. It's called with Johnson bioreactor.
Oh
And
yes.
yeah, you put a bunch of the materials in this bioreactor that you make. It's pretty much chicken wire with some weed cloth on the outside and a column down the center so it can breathe really well. Uh, and you can create some really great fungally dominated compost that will really boost your. I mean, for our crop at least, it'll boost your terpene and flower production. Having that
So it'd be
fungally dominated,
the bloom of the organic game, hey?
it would be part of it. That's for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah.
And there's the wild world of compost is so huge and can do so many things in it that like it's hard to talk about everything in a single video because each one of these things can literally be like an hour-long video
Oh yeah.
on the
Yeah.
bioreactor, on the Bokashi, on the thermophilic compost. This is
Yeah.
more just to get compost ideas flowing around in everybody's head and maybe go out research one that they might want to try and
Yeah.
implement in their garden.
Yeah, and it could be very overwhelming, knowing where to start, what to do, what to add. Yeah, just type into Google search, how to make compost. It's pretty simple.
Oh, yeah. Google
Brown
search,
screens, layers,
30 to
Yeah, they're
1
making sure.
ratio.
Yeah, making
everybody's
sure
got full
that
recipes uploaded with each
There's tons and tons of
denomination out. Yeah.
yeah,
now if I
yeah,
wanted to recommend one book and one book only for people that are getting into growing organically, making their own compost, maybe heading down the KNF/Jadam path, is I would recommend a really great book by Matt Powers called Rejuvenate Your Soil
hmm
Sciences. And in that book, it's a rather, I don't want to say expensive, but it's not a $20 book. It's like $100 book. But it has all the different composting methods that we talked about in this little chat here in that book. Very detailed ways of doing it, what you should add, what you shouldn't add, and
Gets pretty in
yeah,
depth.
and even places to find even further information in that book. Um,
it's definitely a book to have for the rest of your life and learn from the rest of your life.
oh,
It's one of those books that
absolutely.
you want to have on your shelves for sure.
And like
We only got
I
one copy in the house, and I'm finding that to be a struggle.
like I've been researching and playing with living soils and organic growing for quite some time. And if I had that book right when I started, it
Shit
would
would be
be
different.
it would be so crazy because there's so much of what I had to learn over a long period of time in that
Trial and
book
error,
and
and
just
just yeah.
condensed into a bunch of knowledge that it's
Yep.
insane. There's like 10 years worth of knowledge in that book.
Yeah.
It's
I
like finally getting the instruction manual to something that you've been trying to do for like 10 years, and you're like, oh my god, this is amazing.
yeah. I drive truck around town, so I just listen to podcasts and listen to audio books all the time. So every week I'm listening to a new book about soil food webs, regenerative practices, composting, bokashi, just kind of everything. Just picking little bits here and there and
Oh,
I'm trying to
absolutely.
get more into
expanding my
audio
knowledge.
books, man. If you got some audio books, let me know. I'll throw them on while I'm doing other chores.
Yeah, yeah, it's a good way to learn.
Oh,
Get the
absolutely.
little key facts here and there.
And that's the thing.
Start brainstorming.
There's so many people now researching and actively doing regenerative farming, growing organically, growing with living soil, however you want
Yeah.
to categorize it. There's so many people out there doing it now that you can get a lot of that information, and it's pretty crazy that in a very short amount of time how
Yeah.
how easily available a lot of this information has become. Granted, you do have to look for it here and there, but it's becoming like I said, more and more easily accessible, and
Yeah.
it's being explained by people that understand it well enough to maybe explain it to others that can't comprehend a long scientific paper or uh, you know a long scientific even discussion.
Yeah, and sometimes you'll get something but not really fully understand it until somebody puts it in a different light for you, and then you're like, "Oh
Yeah,
my god, I could apply this in so many ways now." And
yeah.
it's
Everybody
kind of
learns a little differently, so it's like,
Yeah. Yeah. I just recently started getting my wife into organic, the organic side of things with soils and whatnot, and amendments. And she has her own little plant business, and she goes and does landscaping for elderly and whatnot. She plants all the flowers in the spring for them, but she starts all her own seeds in the little greenhouses. And I said, well, here's how you do it. Here's 30% compost, 30% uh,
aeration.
peat moss, and then 30% aerations. And we used rice hulls and added some dry amendments, a cup of dry amendments into the 5-gallon bucket, and mixed it all up. And
Rocking
she's
and
been doing good
rolling.
with it.
Hell
Yeah.
yeah.
So
that's awesome, man.
yeah,
Sprinkle a
just
little bit of amendments on there, 3 4 weeks later, just to keep the soil going. Boom.
yeah. And I recently just soaked my mushroom blocks, my lion's
Nice.
mane mushroom kit blocks. I soaked them to rehydrate them, and I dumped all that water into a 5-gallon bucket. She watered all her seedlings with fungal dominant mushroom water.
Hell
So
yeah.
Nice.
yeah,
Get inoculated early on. Keep the
exactly.
plant nice and strong right from the get go.
Yeah, it's all about just the small little practice things here and there, and eventually everything will kick in, and you'll fully understand everything.
Oh, absolutely. Like without a doubt, like even going down the organic path or, living soil or whatever you want to call it, KNF, so many names for it, regenerative farming, you're you're gonna come up against blocks. You're gonna learn a bunch of stuff, you're gonna implement that stuff, and then you're gonna be like, I'm not gonna learn for a second. Then you're gonna learn a bunch of stuff. Don't
Yeah,
try to understand all of regenerative farming or organic
yeah,
farming or composting all at once. You're not going to do it. It's going to be overload. So
Yeah.
pick out chunks and what you feel like interests you the most in
I feel
regenerative farming, and really go hard on and studying those chunks.
it's just like learning an instrument to me. Like you can't just pick up a guitar and just start belting shit out. You're gonna learn like one chord at a time. You know what I mean?
yeah.
Or
Or,
whatever is your vibe. Maybe pianos doesn't matter. It's just like that. You can't just start running before you can walk. You got to figure out,
yeah,
get a
And
good
that's
base on each thing, and then everything will start connecting very quickly.
and that's the wonderful thing about growing organically that I love so much, is that you can just tell somebody, "Oh, follow this recipe, put your plant in there, water it, and you'll get a good plant." And it will work out. And then while they're like, "Oh, that's working so well," it gets them interested in to learning why it's working so well.
yeah, exactly.
And then they
I
start
just
learning extras to make it work even better.
Yeah, I like my last grow here. I somehow ended up getting potworms in my in my pots. I had no clue what potworms were. I didn't know they existed. I kind of was like shocked when I seen them when I dug down a little bit to top dress, and that just but one thing led to another. I just started
Mhm.
researching potworms and what they did and how they're beneficial to the soil, and so I took that soil mix, and I used the old soil from those pots to re-inoculate all the rest of my pots with potworms, because they're
Because they're
beneficial worms.
beneficial. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Once you realize they're awesome, you're like, put it on everything.
yeah,
And that's
exactly.
that's perfect too, because then you're making sure that there's a little bit of every organism in your soil food web, and making
Yeah,
sure that it's running at the most complete that it can.
and even just a teaspoon of old soil that's like fungal dominant or bacteria dominant, whatever, that within 24 to 48 hours will be massive. Like, it will turn that teaspoon worth of bacteria into 10 cups of bacteria.
Uh,
They'll reproduce, and
they reproduce like crazy and very
yeah,
fast. It's insane.
Mhm.
yeah,
Well, shit, man, Hatter. It's been a really great talk about kind of an entry into composts and the different kind of composts out there. I want to thank you for coming on the Green Bros Grow Show
yeah,
and
man.
having a chat with me and Lantern. Uh, I look forward to maybe having another one with you, maybe a little more in depth on some of these composting styles, or maybe another topic altogether.
Yeah, totally. I appreciate you guys having me on. I always enjoy doing this with you guys. You guys are a wealth of knowledge, and I love picking your brains as well.
Heck yeah, man. It's been great chatting with you.
Yeah.
Hell yeah. We'll see you on the next one, Green Gang.